nuclear physicist might give him a loan. Buck, instead, suggested that DeLuca open a sandwich shop and agreed to invest $1,000 in the venture, which would be called Pete's Super Submarines. They started by setting a goal. They would get to 34 stores in 10 years, a number they chose because it was the size of a competitor after which they had, in part, patterned their store. Sales started strong, but then started falling until February 1966, when during their weekly meeting, DeLuca told Buck they had sold only 7 sandwiches for the entire day. Buck began to sketch out their alternatives. The first alternative he listed was abbreviated simply LTD-ATA-TK. When DeLuca asked him what it stood for, Buck replied, "Lock the door and throw away the key." Instead of doing that, however, they decided, perhaps against all reason, to open a second location to show the community how well they were doing. Eventually, they began to make money, and within 8 years they had 16 stores. And while 16 stores certainly made them a successful chain, they realized they weren't going to get to their goal of 34 stores in 10 years. Rather than lowering their sights, they decided to try to franchise their business, which by now had been rebranded to the name it carries today, Subway. Fast forward to the turn of the century. I first met John Leonisio shortly after a handful of fanatical terrorists had killed nearly 3,000 innocent people, throwing the nation and the economy into shock. Flags were flying in the streets. But on Wall Street and on Main Street, the economy was flying at half-mast as the 1-2 punch that had started with the dot-com bubble bursting was now overshadowed by the fear that these maniacs would strike again. In the immediate aftermath, the Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted 14.3% in a week, then a record number, on top of the losses already sustained from the end of the dot-com bubble. Unemployment jumped from 3.9% to 6% in a matter of months, and fear was everywhere. The sale of gas masks in some quarters jumped 500% overnight as anthrax was found in the postal system. Would our malls be next? A sporting event? In the face of this market, John Leonisio had developed a therapeutic massage concept that was different from those around the country. And despite their economic woes, people loved it. In fact, the Economic Times may have contributed to its success. At the time, fewer than 15% of Americans had ever experienced a therapeutic massage, and Leonisio knew a tremendous opportunity existed in the marketplace. Using his decades of experience in the health club industry, he had created a new, membership-based model for marketing spa and therapeutic massage services. He first opened the new concept in a strip mall in suburban Phoenix, and now the business was so successful that he was actually turning away new members. But Leonisio had a dilemma, the same dilemma I have seen dozens of times over the years. People were walking through his newly opened operation with notepads and cameras, and while he tried to keep them out, he knew it wouldn't be long before the competition jumped into his market. He knew what would happen next. People would begin knocking off his concept, and if he didn't move fast, someone else would get the financial rewards for the concept he had developed. Leonisio was sitting on a gold mine. His concept, he was sure, could be expanded throughout the country and even internationally. The problem was capital. To take advantage of the market, Leonisio needed tens of millions of dollars. Bankers weren't going to lend him the money. He only had a single unit, his concept was too new, and he had limited collateral. He was too small to consider an IPO, of course. Likewise, venture capitalists and private equity investors had no interest in a company his size and would need to see more of a track record. And even if they wanted to invest, Leonisio was unwilling to give up control of the company.